Welcome to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast, where we aim to help fellow veterinary rehab therapists increase their knowledge and elevate their practice. I'm Megan Kelly.
And I'm Anae Lloyd. Together, we bring you the latest insights, research, and information in the field of veterinary rehabilitation.
This podcast is brought to you by Onlinepethealth, a leading continuing education membership for veterinary rehabilitation therapists. With Onlinepethealth, you will have access to a wide range of online resources to help you stay up to date with the latest techniques, advances, and trends in the industry.
Our podcast features in-depth conversations with leading experts in veterinary rehabilitation. They share their own experiences and knowledge to help you improve your practice. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out in the field, our goal is to provide you with the tools and the insights you need to succeed.
So join us as we explore the exciting world of veterinary rehabilitation and help you take your practice to the next level. Hey Vet Rehabbers, today I'm chatting with Jane White and we dive into her personal journey of caring for her disabled dog, a journey that completely shifted the way that she sees her patients and their owners. And what I love about this conversation is how honest and relatable it is. Jane shares what it really is like on the other side, the emotions, the challenges, and the small wins that mean everything when you're caring for a pet with mobility issues. And through that experience, she's developed such a deep level of empathy, not just as a professional, but as a pet owner walking the same path as so many of her clients. So this journey didn't just change how she practices, it actually inspired her to write a book, one that gives hope, guidance, and reassurance to pet owners going through something similar. So if you've ever worked with clients navigating long-term conditions or you're supporting a pet through one yourself, this episode is really going to resonate. I'd also like to say a quick thank you to Vicky from @vetness.gr for the shout out on Instagram. Thanks, Vicky. Please reach out to me at meg@onlinepethealth.com. I'd love to gift you a limited edition veterinary rehabilitation podcast mug. If you'd like to keep learning, we have a free webinar area with some fantastic webinars that you can access right now. On small animals, we've got Talking Tendons, Advances in Management of Tendon Injuries with Diane Mason, Using Hydrotherapy to Manage Developmental Conditions in the Dog with Tanya Grantham, and the Equines, Luxating Patellas in the Young Horses with Gillian Tabor. You can head over to onlinepethealth.com/free. And before we head over to the chat with Jane, a quick word from our sponsors. Founded by Dr. Beate Egner, the Veterinary Academy of Higher Learning, also known as VAL, is shaping the future of veterinary rehabilitation worldwide. VAL stands for Evidence-Based Education, Global Collaboration, and Real Clinical Impact. Our mission is simple but powerful, turning science into practical skills. With programs offered worldwide and in multiple languages, VAL helps clinicians combine scientific insight with hands-on expertise, so patients move better, recover faster, and live healthier lives. Flagship certifications include the Certified Canine Rehabilitation Practitioner, or CCRP, Certified Equine Rehabilitation Practitioner, or CERP, and the Certified Canine Fitness Trainer, also known as the CCFT program. They're all developed by the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, which is not only considered the birthplace of evidence-based animal rehabilitation, but also hosts this year's IAAVRPT Symposium. To explore VAL globally, you can visit val.vet and follow VAL on Instagram @val.vet. All right, over to my chat with Jane. Hey, Jane, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Megan. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to have a chat.
Won't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got into the field?
Okay, so I graduated from the Royal Vet College at University of London rather a long time ago, so back end of the 80s, so 87. Been in mixed practice ever since. Initially mostly farm and equine, and then, riding accident, ended up by doing a bit more small animal, and then moved into doing cats. And then I sort of moved into the rehab field. I guess part of that was because my fourth year at uni, I actually spent some time with some equine therapists and really enjoyed it. But there wasn't actually any training around for vets that I could actually find, and I didn't want to go back off and have to do another degree. So I sort of parked it for a bit. And then a vet physio course came up in probably about 2007, 2008. So I went off and did that, absolutely loved it, but got to the end and thought, wow, there are rather a lot of gaps of things I don't know. So then I enrolled with the CRI in the States and did their CCRT program. So put that bit in there. Along the way, I did some hydrotherapy qualifications as well. got into acupuncture a little bit by mistake. I explored it in about 89, 90. Wasn't that happy with it. So I sort of used it on a few downer cows at home, but didn't really do anything else with it. And then I actually had a client, it was what, probably 2009, who was like, I want acupuncture for my dog. She was someone I'd known for a long time. And I said, well, I'll refer you. She said, no, I want you to do acupuncture on my dog. I said, but I'm not trained. It's like, we'll go and train then. So that's how I went and trained. I came back, said, I still don't really know about this because we got paired up with other vets, and vets not knowing human anatomy got a bit hairy. And I certainly had one needle put in GB30 that I couldn't sit down for a few days afterwards. So my experience of acupuncture training was not great. So I came back, told her this, said, I'm really not sure about this. She said, stick some needles in my dog. I have no idea whether they'll be in the right place. And I owe her a lot because I've used acupuncture ever since.
Yeah, yeah. I had a similar experience in my course. We probably did the same course. But it was like I think it was it was a weekend, 4 different weekends, and then exactly that. I remember the very first day we just were sticking needles into one another. But I had a different experience. So at that time I had really bad back pain, and I had the best night's sleep I'd ever had. So the next day, on the Saturday, they asked who doesn't believe in acupuncture, and I was still a bit dubious. I wasn't too sure, so I put my hand up. Anyway, the next day they said, all right, who still doesn't believe in acupuncture? And my hand didn't go up. I was like, no, I'm a believer. I had the best night's sleep. So yeah, it's a great tool to have in your toolbox.
And it was the only thing that worked when I had shoulder pain. Nothing
Yeah.
else worked. But yeah, the acupuncture did. So yes, I've been totally converted, and I think it's got better because I had a vet friend who was trained TCM wise, and she said, "Look, your problem is you need to think about the intention. Stop worrying about the finite bits of where that point is, how big it is, how deep it is. It's the intention." And yeah, I think my results got better since I stopped worrying about it so much.
Yeah. So you've done quite a lot, obviously, of studies. And just as you're talking now, I'm just thinking about myself, similar path. I did veterinarian and worked in mixed practice and then also focused on small animals, and then went and did my CCRP at the University of Tennessee. And obviously there are all these different paths into veterinary rehabilitation, if we can just term it that. But when I look at myself and my identity, I was a vet rehab therapist, but I think I was always a veterinarian. So if somebody actually asked me, like, it would be, I'm a veterinarian and I specialize in this. How do you identify yourself, having done all these things?
I probably actually dodged the thing of actually identifying myself as anything. I sort of go a little bit sort of a bit neutral.
Yeah.
I can't call myself a specialist because I'm not board certified.
Yeah.
So I can't call myself a specialist rehab vet. I probably think of myself as more of a rehab vet, or I'm a vet with a special interest in physio. But it then gets a bit complicated because yeah, your vet colleagues think you're a bit odd because you're doing this other stuff. The vet physios are sort of like, well, you're not one of us because you're a vet. So yeah, I think we are a slightly different breed, but there are actually many more of us now. There are many more vets who are doing rehab. So I think hopefully it's going to get easier.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more accepted by our veterinary colleagues, right? So I think back in the day when I started, it was like 2005. They did think I was very weird. They used to call me the hocus pocus vet. So, because obviously I was, and in their minds, I was doing, I don't know, smoke and crazy things, crystals and things like that. But I think nowadays it's a whole lot more accepted as a veterinary profession.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's nice seeing this is much more accepted. And I think, yeah, I think certainly some people think I'm a bit fringe and a bit wacky because I do a huge amount of Tellington T-touch as well.
Yeah.
Now I'm playing around with tuning forks and vibration therapy. So that sort of gets a bit like, should you be doing that as a vet? So it's just interesting exploring these different ideas.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Let's chat about your dog drift. So you've had quite a unique experience, and I mean, I'm sure there are lots of vet rehab therapists that have been in similar situations. But what I love about your story is that you've chosen to speak about it, and you've chosen to use what's happened with your dog drift as a way to educate other pet owners, and you actually ended up writing a book about it. But tell us about Drift, where you got Drift from, and exactly what happened to Drift.
Okay, so Drift is a border collie. Hopefully, we're going to reach his 13th birthday in the middle of March. I had him as a pup, came from a working background, actually sheepdog registered. A little bit by accident, the clients actually came in, bringing him in for vaccination with his litter mates, and said, if you know anyone who's looking for working dogs, we're trying to find homes for these, but we don't seem to be able to find them. And this little chap shoved me under the elbow while I was writing out his vaccination certificate. And I just lost my previous collie to a splenic tumor. So one of my colleagues said, come on, go and get yourself a puppy. So it's like, well, he was quite cute. So I actually asked the clients and sort of said, well, look, I do live on a farm. He probably won't be actually working, but I'd like him to maybe do some agility. And they're like, yep, okay, you can have him. So yes, he arrived, but he did cause a little bit of trouble along the way because I was just about to go out to start at the conference out there. And it's like, but I can't take a puppy on. So my colleagues actually offered to look after him and puppy sit. And I think he caused total mayhem for the week I was away. But that's how he arrived. Super with people, very reactive around other dogs, to the point we actually got chucked out of training classes because he caused such disruption. But in actual fact, that was actually quite good because I ended up by working with a load of reactive dogs and a trainer and found a pathway through that. So I think that's actually helped me in helping clients who have got reactive dogs or are sneaking around in the early hours of the morning or late at night trying to avoid every other dog in the area. So that was his early bit. Did some obedience work with him, did some scent work with him. Used him as my demo dog. Very active, absolutely loved bombing around absolutely everywhere. Super dog. And then was the fateful day in September 21. I was digging the vegetable garden. He was mooching around behind me. And I saw the neighbour's ginger cat walk past. Didn't really think a huge amount about it because he lived with a cat. He chased the cat. I yelled at him down. He, bless him, obedient, dropped to the ground. But as he dropped to the ground, blood curdling scream, and he blown a disc. So yeah, everything changed from that day onwards.
Yeah. And you find yourself in the position that a lot of our clients are in, right? So what was the first thing you did? You obviously did the practice where you were at, did they have MRIs and things like that? Did they have surgeons, or did you have to go to a specialist clinic?
No, we were also still under a lot of COVID restrictions at that time. The one thing I was lucky about that day was okay, I was in the garden, but I did actually have my phone on me. Most of the time when I'm at home, I leave the phone in the house. I now keep it on me all the time because every time I tried to move away and go and do something, he got really, really distressed. So rang my neighbours. One lot was still stuck in New Zealand with COVID. The other lot had actually gone out. No one who rang actually answered the phone. So I did actually ring the practice, managed to get hold of one of our team there. And they started putting wheels into motion. I said, look, he's spinal. Or I'm 99.9% sure he's spinal. I want to try and get an MRI. Where can we get him in? So they started doing that bit for me. And one of the others came out and helped me actually lift him, move him, and we got some methadone into him just to make sure he was comfortable. I was very lucky. I actually went for a neurologist who his wife's a rehab vet, who I knew. And he said, well, it may not be urgent, but yes, I'm very happy to see him, but I'm going on holiday tomorrow. How quickly can you get here? And bless him, that's Nicholas Granger. He absolutely amazing. He stayed on, so I took him up to Bristol. Wasn't a great journey, worrying about him and trying to make sure he was safe all the way there. But yeah, he went up there. Being COVID, yes, I wasn't allowed to actually go in, but Nicholas was amazing. He did the full examination with his resident right in front of me in the waiting room. So I just had the door open. We were all masked up, but at least I could see everything that happened. And it was like, this is where I think we are, probably an A and MPE, but we can do an MRI if you want. So he stayed and had an MRI the next day, just because I thought, well, if I know what's going on, I've got a better chance of doing the right bit on rehab rather than second guessing, am I right, am I wrong?
Yeah. And so then was Nicholas on holiday the next day
So
when
then
you
he
had
went
that
on
in mind?
holiday the next day, but he handed me to someone else in his team, and they were absolutely amazing. I every time I rang them having an absolute wobble,
Yeah.
they were just there, answered every question. That's fine. Nicholas kept in touch with me anyway, and yes, I it was just amazing because ironically, from after all this, because of just issues, his breeders actually said to me, "We've got another pup here. Would you like him to basically come along behind in due course?" Well, ironically, he has a cerebellar defect. So he ended
Mhm.
up going to see Nicholas as well for MRIs. So yes, he's had both my dogs under his care.
So what was the treatment plan?
So our initial bit, yes, he was diagnosed with an ANMPE. So our initial thing was to keep him as restricted as possible for 2 weeks just to let things settle. But yeah, do try and encourage him to walk and do toilet breaks. He initially could use 3 legs. Then he got to the point for the first 48 hours he couldn't use either back leg. And one of the biggest problems I had with him is he went into shutdown mode, and just
Mentally,
didn't
just
want to know
mentally.
anything. Just
Yeah, he
like don't want to
given
interact
up.
with you. I don't want to do anything. He just went inside himself, and I found that really, really hard. Trying to assess whether he was okay or not okay. And I think I probably freaked him out because I kept checking him. By the
Mm.
time I kept checking all his reflexes, I think I was just adding to his, I know I'm not right.
Yeah.
And ironically, I did actually, we were allowed to have limited contact with people. And that friend is actually an ophthalmologist and she still remembers it to this day. I was talking to her and I said, I really don't know whether he's making any progress or not because he's just won't do anything. And she actually came over, walked in and said, "What's all this, Drifty?" And he wagged the tip of his tail. And I thought, oh, there is some movement there.
Mm.
And we made progress from them.
And so he was at home now.
Yeah, so he was at home. He was confined to the bathroom. I did have a big crate for him, but it got a lip on it. I couldn't physically lift him in and out easily. So yes, he was in the bathroom with mats down and a baby gate. He was not impressed because after my mum died, he was actually allowed to sleep on the bed with me. So he expected that he should sleep on the bed. So for him, this was awful being banished to the bathroom. So, like probably every other owner, what you do, you end up sleeping on the floor with them and then thinking afterwards, this probably is not good. Neither of us was getting good sleep. But we do it and we don't think about it till
Now, I'd
afterwards.
love to talk about the two hats that you were wearing at that time because, and I think, you have this insight now as to what our clients go through. So obviously you're the clients, you're in the situation, you have all the feelings, but you have the knowledge. And I think sometimes, if I think about myself, sometimes when I'm in that situation, when it's one of my pets and I'm the client, I've actually learned to just move away from being the vet and move away from being the vet physio or vet rehab therapist and just be the clients and then just wholeheartedly trust in my colleague. And that's actually the best way. And, in my early days as a vet, I remember trying to be both, and it just doesn't work for me. How was it for you? Were you similar to how I am now, or were you talk about you're checking on him constantly. You obviously being the vet at that time.
I think I was torn between the two. I had the bit of thinking, I'm trained to do this as a clinician, therefore I should be able to deal with it.
Mm.
But then there was so much emotional stuff that got in the way that there were times I really couldn't think like a clinician. I just couldn't. Yeah, you just get in a muddle. So you do have to stand back and hand it to somebody else. I think, yeah, because we still got some restrictions, that was actually quite hard for me to hand it to someone else because I was also in a bubble trying to protect someone who was actually a cancer patient. So I was all having to try and make sure that I didn't put them at extra risk. So I was keeping myself away from everybody. So that also complicated all the things. But I think, yeah, generally, I think we're better standing back.
Yeah.
But it does
Yeah.
then mean that you have to put your trust in someone else. So it's a question of who you've got around you that you can trust. And it's also very hard for them. So the number of times you get, well, I think we should do this, but are you okay with that? And you're thinking, I'm obviously coming across that I might challenge what they're going to say, but I'm not. I was grateful for what they'd actually say, but I think people are also worried about stepping on our toes as well,
Yeah, yeah.
especially our younger colleagues. They're a bit like, but why are you asking me about it? It's like, because I need your help.
Yeah, and then sometimes they'll go into like veterinary pet owner mode, and then they'll start explaining things very simply to you, and then
Yeah,
they'll be like, "Oh, sorry, you actually know all of this." And but then actually I'll say, "No, just keep saying what you're
just keep
saying because
doing it. Yes.
it's actually helping me." You know,
Yeah.
it's crazy. I know what you're saying, but it's helping me process all of this. So if you put yourself now into the pet owner hat. Tell us a bit how you were going through, um, and if we can know sort of the feelings and things, how do you think, and what advice would you give to vet rehab therapists in this moment? Because you're in this situation now where you're waiting for things to get better, you're not really seeing any progress, you're hoping, and it's a little bit desperate, right? And if you can give us some insights and any advice on how you think us as therapists, how we can support pet owners through this. Because we want to be so hopeful, right? But you don't want to ever give false hope. You don't want to be so hopeful that, then they're disappointed. But if I think about me, I was always hopeful, like let's keep going, keep at this. I used to give them 3 months before I said anything. All right, well, maybe not. But I'd love to get your insight and your advice on if you look at yourself, how you were feeling. How could we have supported you in that time?
And I think the bit on how you're feeling was why I stuck my neck out in the book. I was basically advised by someone, do not write about emotions because they're your emotions, not other people's emotions. But I just said, you sit there on the floor with other clients and you see them going through similar things. And it's a flipping roller coaster from day to day. Sometimes you're quite positive and then something silly happens or other things are going on in life which just make you feel absolutely useless. Um, I I think it's changed a little bit the way I feel about things because I think we do have that initial bit where you've got the dog that's fine and then suddenly it's not. You get the vet team move in, maybe do sort your diagnostics, however extensive or limited that may be. You may have conservative management, you may have surgery, and then suddenly that dog is back with the owner, and the owner is 24/7 carer, wondering what the hell they're going to do, how they're going to cope. They're still trying to work, got family, got other pets. And I think those initial few weeks are really, really hard while you're trying to work out how you deal with all this and also get over the shock of it, because I don't think you really take a lot of it in. And I certainly feel now that those initial bits are where, as vet professionals, we need to actually extend a little bit more support. Now, that support may be just sending someone a WhatsApp message, not necessarily ringing them all the time, but just having some contact and just seeing how they are and what they're worried about. Because there is massive guilt. There's a huge thing about can you actually cope? If you've got the dog that you're having to express its bladder, you've got people who've never expressed a bladder in their life before, let alone know exactly where it is or what they're going to do or how often or should they do this? Are they going to hurt their dog when they do it? And I think toileting issues is probably the number one bugbear for people to start with. You can probably cope with some of the lifting and moving and supported stand if you've got the right harnesses. I think we've got better now in actually sending people home with appropriate harnesses or advice on how to use a sling or support their dog. Um, but I think if we go back 5, 10 years, I don't think we did. I think a lot got left to their own devices in trying to look on the internet what sling is appropriate. How do I do? What do I do? What size do I get? I frequently see ones which are inappropriate fitting for people. So we were almost setting people up to fail a little bit before we started. And the timeline is really hard. I agree with you. It's like as vets, vet physios, we want to fix everything. We want everything to get better. We want a good outcome. And then you've seen someone who's had their dog go through surgery, and you're sort of thinking even more, they've gone through all that surgery and we've really got to have a good outcome at the end. So I think it is a real delicate balance, isn't it, between being realistic being supportive and positive. And it varies from client to client, doesn't it? The thing I probably find hardest is the clients who have had their dogs with a disc go to surgery. They come see me, they're doing stuff, and when you get quite a long way down, they say, but if I'd known it was going to be this hard, I'd never have done it.
Mm.
And I find that heartbreaking. So I think we are almost having to turn things around in, can we manage people's expectations before they start so they realize a little bit what it's going to be like? But then do we put people off? I don't know.
I'm going to put you on the spot now.
Yeah.
So, so putting your owner hat back on. Let's say Drift, because Drift was partially paralyzed.
Yeah.
Let's say it was complete paralysis. You know you're in control and you're in that situation. Do you know what you would have done? Would you have said, I'm going to carry on and I will carry Express, do everything, have the wheelchair? Or is it something that you're not sure of? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm just thinking like
No,
those people, like the one that you say now that says, if I'd known it was going to be like this, I never would have done this. Um, in your situation, what would you have done?
and I think that's the really interesting one because I've had various people say to me, said, did you ever consider putting him to sleep? I
Mm,
never considered putting him to sleep. It never even crossed my mind. But I don't know whether that's because I'm in the privileged position. If
mm,
he suddenly got worse in the middle of the night and he was in absolute dire straits, I can do it. I don't have
yeah,
to make the appointment to take him somewhere else. So I don't know if that clouds my vision.
yeah,
Because I never thought of giving up on him. And I suppose I've actually used it as a bit of an educational journey, really. The stuff that he's taught me, I know has made a massive difference to a lot of other clients. And I've tried things with him that maybe I wouldn't have done um, if I hadn't been in a sort of dual role. As an
yeah,
owner, I probably with certain things I wouldn't have done, but it's like, well, I'll try it. Um, yeah, I think the biggest issue for me was actually expressing his bladder, which I've actually found quite shocking because I have never struggled to express bladders in practice. And I'm thinking,
yeah,
why is it? And I presume it was the emotional stuff that got in the way. And he hated me doing it. But it was in another way, it was an interesting situation because I guess up until that point, I'd sort of been encouraged, right, you need to express a dog's bladder 4 times a day.
mm,
And then I'm saying to Nicholas, I can't do this. This dog absolutely hates me every time I go near him because I'm expressing his bladder. He is so tense, I can't even tell what size his bladder is. So we ended up by resorting to the scanner. So fortunately we had a spare scanner in the practice, so I had that at home, and I was scanning his bladder to decide whether I was going to express him or not, and it took away the panic. But equally, it was like I was having that discussion with Nicholas more recently about the fact it's like each dog is individual. Do we need to stick to our regimented, right? You need to do them so many times a day? No, we probably don't. It's individual.
and you think you as a professional were struggling with that. So not just struggling with doing it, like as you say, struggling with the emotion of it. The emotion of your dog looking at you and just wanting to get away from you. And how hard that is for the owners, and them thinking, what have I done? And at least for us, you know, because we know what could happen and how it could improve, there is some light. But for that pet owner, they don't have all that knowledge that we have. So
Yeah, and
I loved your recommendation of just checking in, just WhatsApp. Are you okay? Like, how are you guys all doing? Because I think that's actually what they need. They actually just need to know it's okay if you're struggling. And I think that's where veterinary nurses come in really, really well. I think
definitely.
veterinary nurses, they're great at expressing bladders and they're great with that emotional stuff and talking um, to owners about all their feelings and all those kind of things. They're very in touch with that.
Yeah, I think it's a learning curve for owners and having to learn how to do a procedure anyway. And are they going to cause damage? Can they hurt their animal?
Mm.
Are they doing the right thing? Are they not doing the right thing? So I think the bit of support there. And I guess I was also really lucky in that living alone, I didn't have to worry if we had pee or poo here, there, and everywhere. Certainly, I've got clients that's been the biggest issue. It's caused so many family risks.
Mm.
On sort of, yeah, Drift has been left with some fecal incontinence. He gets about 15 seconds of when he needs to go. Fortunately, his bladder's okay. But yeah, there are times, even though I can accept it, I don't have a problem with it. There are times when, yeah, you're tired and you come home and it's like, oh no, not again. What have I just trodden in? So I fully get how that can cause massive issues for people.
Is there anything else you think that us as therapists underestimate that our pet owners are going through when looking after a semi-paralyzed or paralyzed dog or cat or whatever?
I think we have, I think sometimes we underestimate the pressure that clients put on themselves. And I think sometimes they need us to give them permission to say that they're not okay, that they're struggling, or to say that they've done everything they can, but they can't cope. And maybe they need to let go and they need permission to be able to let go without having all the guilt there.
Mm.
Um, I've I think I've got better over the years, as probably we all do, in having the difficult conversations about when it might be time to say goodbye, without doing it in a judgmental way, but actually letting people have some of the information, because I think there's still we still don't as a society like talking about death, and I think people don't necessarily know what's involved unless they've had a pet before. If they've had a pet before, they've got some idea, and they'll often that will cloud their judgment for the next one. But for the first time pet owner, yeah, that's hard.
Do you cover that in your book?
Yes, I did a whole chapter on time to say goodbye and just tried to do it as sort of questions of the sort of things that I've been asked over the years, and also bring in different resources about where they can get help and different options and things from there. And obviously, it's going to vary a bit from country to country and different cultures and what people think. But I thought it was something that we should try and bring up. And interestingly, I certainly had a lady stop me and say that it made a difference to her daughter just trying to decide when to let her dog go. And that wasn't the fact that it was a disabled dog. It was just like it had got problems and she really wasn't sure about letting it go. And having read it and thought about it and made it a little bit easier for make a decision, still a rubbish decision, but a little bit easier for her.
Yeah. Tell us about the reason for the book. I mean, obviously, a lot of us have pets which we're rehabbing or doing things. What was your key reason for writing the book?
Um, It wasn't the original intention to write a book. I was actually doing a sales program, and which wasn't really quite for me, and they got hold of my email, and I got emailed about um, you might be interested in how to write a book, and I got involved in doing that course and actually loved it, and thought, well, yes, this is fine. Maybe I'll write a book. What do I write a book about? And then it was like, write it about something that you have some knowledge of and you're passionate about. So then it's like, well, okay, it's probably got to be rehab and animals. And then I thought, well, in actual fact, I'd really like to have a lasting tribute to Drift, something that was always there. So I was never sure that I was actually going to get to the point of actually publishing this. I was maybe just going to write it because I wanted part of his story there. And then I spoke to a few clients and then started realizing they were struggling with the same things that I'd struggled with. So I thought, right, put the two together, give it a whirl. So that's it, sort of happened a bit by accident.
And then can you go through the book, just so therapists know exactly what's in it, and then they know, what type of clients they can refer to the book.
Okay, so I tried to write it as a sort of instructional, easy guide that could be relevant to spinal injuries, but could also be relevant to any dog which had issues with mobility. So any of the arthritic dogs, or yeah, whatever you want to take, anything that's mobility was not quite as good as it should be. And I guess it was like I spoke to various people and it was like, well, we've come away from the vets and we've got this diagnosis, but we don't actually understand a little bit that diagnosis. So it was like putting a little bit of basic anatomy in. The usual analogies of discs and being like jam donuts and jam squeezing out on different bits from there, I think people do relate to. So they got a rough idea and a few pictures of the spine just so they knew roughly what a spinal column looked like. So there's a little bit of basic anatomy there. And then I tried to actually go on to sort of what sort of clinical signs you might come across with certain conditions affecting the spine, just trying to keep it very easy and straightforward without going into a lot of detail. A little bit on diagnostics. I still think the most important thing for everybody is to have a good neuro exam. So if they are really, really financially strapped, if you've got a good neurologist, you can probably miss out a lot of the imaging because they will have a good idea on what's likely to be going on. So yeah, also put what sort of modalities you can use and why they might be useful in certain circumstances or what they might not show. A little bit on the different bits on the conditions and how they might present and whether they might be surgical treatment or conservative. Very brief bit on types of procedure, but only very brief. But I've tried to put in throughout certain references so that people can go off and look up other things. And as far as sort of bits on prognostic indicators for some of the IVDD, actually sort of moving back to some of the work that was done at Cambridge and actually putting links in there and what they found as to some basic stats without going into really heavy duty stuff from there. And then we were just really sort of working on to different types of treatment. I stayed off medical bit because I think, yes, I just mentioned there are particular medications that we might use for pain management, but didn't go into any detail on them at all. It's just like they are there, talk to your vet about them. And then really doing it more from the rehab point of view of day-to-day management, how you could actually try and get through the things that you needed to work to try and improve outcomes for your dog, working on supported stands and proprioceptive tracks and some of the things that I did with Triff, but also sort of saying it really is individual. I can't sit here and write you a recipe for this condition because it would be wholly inappropriate, but these things are out there. Going through a little bit on different types of therapies and the electrotherapies and when they might or might not be appropriate. And again, trying to link that back to certain research papers for where they might be useful in spinal cord injury. Then, yes, just things about how to modify your environment, what sort of things to look at to make life at home easier for the dogs, to make sure sort of the different options you've got for confining them so that they were still part of the family rather than being shut off to one side. Floor surfaces, how you might modify steps and stairs, use of assistive devices, slings, boots. At the time, I was a bit upset that I was basically for the Guide to Professional Conduct that I shouldn't advertise and endorse products, but in actual fact, I think that's quite useful because products come and go. So I've done it more along the lines, these are the sort of things to look for in a sling. These are the sort of things I'd look for in selecting a set of boots and when they might be appropriate. I think the whole way through, I was worried about what people think about it, but I then looked at it the other way and thought, this is my personal opinion. People may not agree with me, but if it actually means that they then go and have a conversation with someone else and say, I don't agree with what you said, what else can we do? Then it will have achieved its goal. And then I did put the 2 chapters on the end, which, rightly or wrongly, there's some different bits. I still think they were the right thing to put in about when it might be time to say goodbye and what happens and what your options are for afterwards. And also some of the support places you can do. So like certainly over here, like access to the Blue Cross for their bereavement support. And then I've also done one on emotions. So that was a mixture of some of the stuff I went through, but also some of the other things that I've learned from clients along the way. So the real roller coaster of, the guilt, the fatigue, the bits we need to do for self-care, but also trying to bring it back and actually say, yes, it was tough, but wow, there were real moments of joy. And it's not all doom and gloom. There are points where you just go, I'm actually thinking, while I wish it had never happened from his point of view, I have learned so much and we've had so much fun and explored things that I would never have done with him before if he'd been a totally healthy, mobile dog. So that's it in a bit of a nutshell.
Yeah. No, I mean it's very comprehensive. And I know that last chapter on the emotions, you were in two minds whether to add or not, but I think it's probably one of the most important chapters. I think often people they might have feelings that they can't place and they're not sure because especially in that overwhelmed state. So to be able to read about what somebody else has gone through and how they felt and the roller coaster, and then to be in that position to say, hey, this is what Jane said you went through. This is normal. I have this roller coaster. One day I'm up, the next day I'm down, I'm positive, I'm not positive. This is normal. And I think that if they hadn't read that and you didn't have that chapter, they would be questioning, like, am I being a bad owner here? And the guilt would probably be worse. And so I think it was a much needed chapter to share that, because when you share your emotions, people can then relate so much more to you and to your experience, and then actually say, okay, this is what I'm going through. So it sounds absolutely amazing. So let's just say somebody's gone through that book, all right, as a pet owner. What do you wish that pet owner would feel after they've read your book? Like, what is the overall sort of feeling that you want them to have?
I want them to feel empowered. I want them to have the knowledge to be able to feel I can make decisions without being terrified. Because I think
No.
there's a huge amount of fear of the unknown. Um, and I guess I also want them to actually feel that out of adversity, there are actually some amazing things that come out of it. It's been a real challenging journey, but it's been amazingly beautiful in other ways. And you learn a lot about yourself. Really learn a lot about yourself and sort of things that you didn't think you could do that you end up by actually doing without thinking about it, and how with that knowledge you can help other people.
Love it. So where can therapists get hold of the book? So if they want it themselves, or where can they send their clients?
So it's available on Amazon, both as a paperback and as a Kindle edition.
And the topic, the heading is Loving Life with a Disabled Dog, an Owner's Guide to a Spinal Injury.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is there just one edition, right?
There is just one edition. My sister-in-law actually came up with the loving life bit because there has actually been a talk with some various other people that if we have loving life with a, we might have to move it into other spheres to help people in other ways.
Nice. Love it. Jane, it's been so awesome chatting with you. And yeah, thanks for sharing your journey. And yeah, congratulations. I think it was like August last year. We chatted last year
Yeah.
about you publishing the book. So, but I'm so glad I got a chance to chat to you about it. And yeah, just awesome. I love it when vet rehabbers share their experiences and educate. And writing a book is a great way to do it. So yeah, well done.
Well, thank you. It's been quite interesting actually just bringing back some of this stuff and actually discussing it because, I wrote it, but a lot of the time you don't actually talk to other people about it. You talk about little snippets of it. So actually going back and thinking about all of it's been, very interesting. So thank you for this afternoon.
Awesome. Take care, Jane. Bye.
Okay, bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about all things vet rehab. A big thanks to our sponsor, the Veterinary Academy of Higher Learning, also known as VAL. Their sponsorship allows us to be able to give this podcast to you for free. So go and check them out at val.vet. Don't forget to bookmark the next year's Vet Rehab Summit on Saturday, the 31st of October, 2026. Come and be a part of the world's largest online veterinary rehabilitation conference created specifically for you, the vet rehabber community. Online Pet Health members get VIP complimentary access to the Vet Rehab Summit. For more information about continuing education for vet rehabbers, you can go to onlinepethealth.com.